Okay, so I've gotten enough messages and emails about Tyler, I want you to talk about 1 foot jumping, and I absolutely will, and that's what today's video is all about, is determining the difference between two different styles of 1 foot jumping, which is speed jumping and power jumping, what that means, if and when you should strive for each one, or whether or not that's something that just happens naturally, and then how do you thrive as that type of a jumper. So we're gonna talk first and foremost about speed jumping. And the one thing that you should understand between speed and power jumping as a 1 foot jumper is, when I say speed, it means that an athlete utilizes speed as their means of creating potential energy. That doesn't mean that they're not exhibiting power. That's impossible. You have to still source power, but the majority of that power and that potential energy is coming from the horizontal acceleration. And then what becomes very necessary is the strides being placed in a position that allows the athlete to carry that acceleration through takeoff. Okay, so if I walk through, now I'm a right-footed 1 foot jumper, and I was a 1 foot speed jumper. It's a high jumper, and a lot of times in high jump, an athlete will naturally gravitate. That was myself as an athlete, but what that means is, as I plant my right foot for takeoff, so as I'm coming through takeoff, and my right foot strikes the ground, my trail leg, or the leg that was my plant, as I transition into my block, and that's another thing to note, that 1 foot contacts, they're the same as 2 foot contacts, they just look different obviously because we're taking off 1 foot. The last contact, we call our block. Our block again is our brake. It helps to provide competing force. We slam that foot down and then we go through our block to be able to transition our center of mass up or out depending on what type of jump we're doing. So with a speed jump, as I transition into my final stride and this foot plants, I'm going to have a shorter ground contact because I'm going to be, again, carrying this speed by cycling that trail leg through to my hip into takeoff, and it's really just a continuation of the running stride versus slamming the foot and trying to source a ton of power from the ground. So here, this foot comes up and through, and that knee drives nice and high. If we kind of pick this up a little bit more dynamically through this last couple strides, it's here, and that foot cycles. And if we slow that down, you'll be able to see that foot, that takeoff leg, or sorry, the leg that I'm taking off, the trail leg will cycle. Versus that of a power jump. A power jump is going to be a little bit more, again, we're going to create speed, but the athlete is going to typically spend a little bit more time on the ground because their body or their physiology lends itself to being able to use a little bit more absolute power from the tissues as a means to create lift or distance. So what that means is, and how that would look different, is as I'm going into my plant, typically a power jumper will plant a hair further ahead of the hip than a speed jumper, which has a contact point of a little bit more underneath the hip, because that, again, does not impede the acceleration through takeoff. With a power jump, you'll notice an athlete tends to stay a little bit further back behind the contact point on takeoff, and the trail leg, instead of cycling to the hip, will tend to sweep. And you might even hear like a toe drag. So as they plant, this foot here comes through and swings. So if I was from this side and I threw out that plant, that foot would actually almost drag, or it may drag if you hear that. Contrary to popular belief, a toe drag is not a bad thing. It's going to show that when the athlete gets lower to that ground, can actually help to regulate a little bit of the acceleration through takeoff. So take a look at your 1 foot jump. Try to figure out what style you cater toward more, I guess, naturally. And then it can come down to training your 1 foot jump technique based on the style of jumper you are. Not all 1 foot jump drills are created equally, meaning there are some that are catered more toward speed jumpers, and there are some that are catered more toward power jumpers. So I guess it's kind of it's a toss-up. It's a balance between natural physiology and neurology, and it's also a balance between kind of what you grew up doing naturally, or if you've had influences of certain coaches. Both techniques are very effective, but it's important to understand what you are, and that way it gives you kind of a clearer picture of how to train for that on your own. So again, and I will have overlaid video of other jumpers jumping that style to give you a little bit more context. So we have speed jumper and we have power jumper. Hope you enjoyed this. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, hit subscribe and the notification, and we'll see you in the next one.